Welcome to the Derek Creason Show. This is episode 5. As always, you can get in touch with me and give me feedback or questions or comments on my email, derek@derekcreason.com, or you can get a hold of me on my social media, just at Derek Creason on Twitter and Instagram. All right, so today is episode 5. This is only 8 months since episode 4, so dad joke here again. We're going to keep putting them out more often. But 8 months is actually a lot better than the 38 months from the time before. So we'll keep driving on. So we'll go over some recent updates and then give you a rundown of everything on today's show. So back in February, I actually published a book. And now that'll be on my intro tag in the beginning, which I didn't say just a second ago. But my book is available on Amazon. You can get it in Kindle and paperback. It's called 20-something, Surviving the 10 Most Important Years of Your Life. You can get it for $7 on Kindle or $11, maybe it's $12 on paperback. So check all my links on my social medias, on my website. It's all over everywhere. You can get to it or just search my name on Amazon.com. You'll find it. So I'm really excited about it. It's doing pretty well, so go and check it out. Other things we got coming up on today's show, I am currently deployed. Most of you probably knew that if you knew me. If you didn't, I'm coming up on the end of a deployment, so we'll talk Army life segment today. We'll also talk some pro wrestling and MMA. We'll also go over my creative corner, see what I'm working on, and we'll hit the highlights of the normal kind of stuff, movies, TV, music, and we'll go over some of the news today. So that's what's coming up. All right, first up is movies. So let's talk movie stuff. I'm going to go over the last 3 movies I've watched and kind of give you my thoughts on them, and then we'll talk some movie news if I can find some. The last movie I watched was Zodiac. It's been a while since I watched it, but I felt like rewatching it. I think it came out in the early 2000s, but it was a good serial killer movie. We've got Iron Man and the Hulk actors in it. I'm drawing a blank on their names when I'm trying to talk live. It's pretty good. It has Jake Gyllenhaal in it. It kind of reminds me like a really long episode of Criminal Minds where they go after a serial killer, but it was kind of interesting. I enjoyed it. Always a good movie. The last movie I watched was The Adam Project on Netflix. This is a Ryan Reynolds movie. It looked like a good PG-13 fun sci-fi movie. And it was kind of cliche Ryan Reynolds doing his thing. Only medium cursing since it was PG-13, but still entertaining. It actually ended up being a lot more like emotional than I thought it would, with just kids and their dads and their feelings and being angry and sad and dealing with all those kinds of emotions. I was not prepared to deal and process through all these kinds of emotions during this movie. I just wanted some sci-fi stuff. So it had all that fun, good sci-fi stuff, but it has some good tearjerker emotional stuff in it too. So great movie. And then the third latest movie I have watched was Blade 2. I think it was like a week or two ago I rewatched this movie. It kind of cracks me up. I hadn't watched the Blade movies in a long time. This one came out early 2000s. It looked so obvious, like so much leather jackets, leather pants, full-on dark vampire-y BDSM Matrix wannabe looking early 2000s movies. Had some bad CGI in parts of it, as kind of was the era. But still, a decent movie, decent vampire movie, decent action, entertaining, lots of killing vampires. So what more can you want from a Blade movie? So that's the last 3 movies that I've seen. Don't worry, I've got a whole long list. I've actually been keeping track of all the movies I watched so far on deployment. I think I'm up to 80 or 81. I'll keep digging backwards into that list as I pump out more episodes. That is where I'm at on watching movies. Movie news, I haven't been keeping up with movie news too much, other than I know Black Adam is coming out sometime soon. I'm a huge fan of The Rock. I don't know much about Black Adam in the comic book universe or the DC universe, so it'll be interesting to see if it's any good. So looking. All right, next up is TV shows. So everybody watches TV, especially if you're on deployment. I'll talk about that later, about free time and stuff. So what are the 3 most recent TV shows I've been watching? And it's going to be kind of cliche, popular ones right now, because I kind of dart all over the place. But I've been watching the Jeffrey Dahmer show on Netflix, which I think I'm 7 or 8 episodes in. I haven't quite finished it. And it is like a super creepy episode of Criminal Minds. It's interesting, but I usually sometimes have to take a break after a day or two after watching it because the dude is just so creepy. Great acting, but man, what a creepy serial killer. So interesting, but ugh. just kind of makes you feel gross. The next show that I've been watching is Rings of Power, the Amazon one. I just finished it. I think it was 8 episodes for this first season. I'm a pretty big Lord of the Rings fan. It's been 20 years since I read the books, but I watched the movies a lot. I know the internet's been hating on this show a lot. I haven't read a ton of things about it other than they changed some of the things from the story in the books, which is going to happen anytime you make a movie out of books. But overall, I liked the story. I thought it was interesting. I thought it had good characters. And I'm kind of interested to see where they take it. Even though it's set like 2,000 years earlier than the main storyline, it's still interesting and has some callbacks and look forwards to how it all relates. I like it. I don't know why it's getting such bad ratings and press on the internet, but maybe it's just one of those just like Nickelback things that's just cool to hate on. I don't know. I just look to be entertained and enjoy it, and so far it's met this, so I like it. The next show is House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones prequel. I've only watched the first 5 or 6 episodes of this show. I haven't finished it yet. I never watched the original Game of Thrones. It's been on my list of things to do for years since it was so popular, but I never got around to it. I'm losing interest. It's going downhill fast for me. It seems like these hour and 20-minute episodes are a lot of talking, a lot of exposition. Sometimes there's some action and fighting and other stuff, but a lot of talking. And then each episode is jumping 5, 10, 15, 20 years in the timeline. I don't like when I have to go read an article after I watch an episode to be like, what happened in the 15 years in between this episode? Why was that guy's shirt important? Or why is so-and-so against so-and-so? And why can't I remember their names? So I'm starting to lose interest in this show. I think I'll try to power through season 1. It's only a couple more episodes to see if it gets any better. Maybe it will get better. I don't know. But so far, the jury's still out for me on that show. I would rate it meh, going downhill for me. So what are your guys' thoughts on those 3 shows? Hit me up, email me, message me on Twitter, whatever. Let me know what you think. What shows I'm looking forward to watching. There's like a million comedy specials on Netflix. I'm looking forward to watching those. Sometimes I'll watch those with Amy. Sometimes we'll watch them remotely together. So I'm looking forward to watching more of those. Probably the show I'm most looking forward to watching SEAL Team. SEAL Team just started season 5 or season 6, their new season, a couple weeks ago. And I've actually seen every episode of the show. It's a great show. I've actually just started rewatching it from the beginning. And then about a month or 2 ago, they were over in Jordan. I was in Jordan at the time. And they were over there filming. And one of the actors came and did a meet and greet at the USO. Shout out to the USO and that guy. It was really cool. He's Bravo 5 on the team. He's the guy with the dog all the time. He was a super cool guy. It was fun to just sit and talk with him for an hour, take a picture with him, get to meet him. He was just real down to earth, pretty cool. I'm waiting till I get home to watch that show with Amy because we watch it together. So it's kind of killing me, trying not to see spoilers or commercials. That show's great, and that's what I'm looking forward to. And that was the other main thing was I'm really just looking forward to watching shows with Amy. That's kind of our wind down thing to do in the evenings. So I'm just been missing that a lot and ready to do that some more. And then one last question for everybody on TV shows. Should I catch up on all the Star Wars shows? The last one I watched was Mandalorian. I haven't watched Boba Fett or Obi-Wan or Andor yet. I like a lot of that kind of stuff. I just haven't caught up on it. I don't know if it's worth it. Maybe I'll get to it eventually. All right, next up is music. So I love music. I like being creative. Music, one of my favorite things. Who knows how long this segment will go, but we'll just kick it off. So here on my outline, it just says favorite new song. So favorite new song I've come across lately, a new band I found called Haste the Day. It's kind of like heavy metal, speed metal. I've been exploring Ozzy's new album called Patient Number 9. It looks like a big collaboration album with a lot of other musicians. So I've listened to a couple songs about that. It's kind of neat. Five Finger Death Punch has a new album out. I know they're kind of cliche radio rock, but I still like it. I've listened to some of that. I mentioned Haste the Day. Found a band called Sabaton from a buddy at work. Kind of like the, what do we call it, power metal, mystical metal, fantasy metal would probably be the best way to describe it. It's just kind of creative and really neat. Once in a while, I'll wander into hip-hop a little bit. I like some Juice WRLD's music, but then I'll go right back into rock and metal. Found a new band called Grey Wind. It's pretty good. And then I've been listening to some old Atreyu metal stuff. And then just kind of trying to make another list of guitar riffs I want to work on when I get back home to play the guitar some more. If you really want to see all the stuff I've been listening to or that I like, you can go check out my Spotify profile. It's public, and then on there I've got a playlist called Like Songs, and anytime I like a song, I copy it over to this playlist called Like Songs. Anybody can see the music that I like, so you just have to go to open.spotify.com/user/Drake495. I'll put that in the show notes as well. But yeah, you can go there and check out the music that I've listened to on Spotify. Next up, doing a free trial of Apple Music right now to see if it's worth switching to. So far, I don't like it. I'm very biased towards Spotify. I've been on Spotify for 5 years. Lots of nerdy pros and cons on both sides. Mostly the interface on the Apple Music just seems clunky. I can see the algorithm has potential to really get my likes down, so I'm trying not to be biased against that, even though I feel like Spotify is amazing at that. But I've also trained it for 5 years on music I like, so it's not a fair trade yet. What are your thoughts on the two big platforms? I don't like the idea of being locked into the Apple ecosystem, even though most of my stuff is Apple nowadays, the older I get. But I do like Spotify. I can kind of go anywhere. Android, iPhone, Mac, PC, Windows, Linux, whatever. I kind of like Spotify for that. So let me know what you think on Apple versus Spotify. All right, next up, recent concerts, upcoming shows. Well, there's not a lot of concerts in the Middle East, or Southwest Asia, as we like to call it. But Drowning Pool came through and played at the USO on the 4th of July weekend. So that was a good time. It was actually quite entertaining. They're a 4-piece band guy, but their singer ended up having a passport issue, and he couldn't make it into the country. So the other 3 members of the band just kind of had to wing it and do the whole show. But they didn't tell anybody till like the 3rd or 4th song in, and I was just like, I thought they were kind of better at singing, but maybe they're just not having an off night or whatever. But once we realized that that wasn't their main singer guy, we gave him a lot more slack, and the screamy song sounded great, but any song where he kind of had to try to sing and hit a melody or whatever, he was off just a tad. But he was doing his best to fill in for their singer who wasn't there. So they had good energy, and it was a lot of fun. As far as upcoming shows, oh gosh, I've been creating a list of shows that I missed this year. Pretty much any cool show that came up I would go to, but then, the pandemic came, and then for a year and a half, 2 years, there was no live music, and I didn't realize how much I missed live music and concert. Of course, and I left in January of 2022 for deployment. Everybody's back out on the road now, traveling and touring. So this is not a complete list, but so far bands that I've missed this year coming through Kansas City: Chevelle, Hailstorm, Sum 41, Fozzy, Shinedown, Slash with Miles Kennedy, Megadeth, Trivium, Alice in Chains, Bush, Third Eye Blind, Avril Lavigne, Anthrax, and Black Label Society. A ton of good bands that I would have loved to have gone and seen. Some I've seen quite a few times. I think Chevelle is my record holder of 8 or 9 times. Hailstorm always puts on a good show. I've never seen Sum 41, surprisingly, or Fozzy yet, but a lot of these other bands, they all put on great shows. All right, and finally, here in the music section, podcasts. What podcasts I've been listening to? I like to listen to a lot of podcasts off and on. I don't like getting locked into Google Podcasts or Apple Podcasts or whatever. I'm sure they're fine platforms. I found Pocket Casts quite a few years ago and bought it premium for $10, and it's been great ever since. I probably have 30, 40 podcasts in there, and then I probably listen to 7 or 8 of them regularly, and then another 5 to 10 of them irregularly. But just some of the high categories I have. I'm a big wrestling nerd. I like pro wrestling. I'll talk about that later on. But I listen to some wrestling podcasts. A couple podcasts I list for wrestling. I listen to one called Wrestling with Freddie, and that's with Freddie Prinze Jr. And yes, it's that Freddie that you're thinking of from the 90s heartthrob movies, She's All That, I Know What You Did Last Summer. Freddie Prinze Jr. is actually a big wrestling nerd. He actually used to work for WWE as a writer. He's actually trying to start his own wrestling company now. He has a podcast. He talks every week of wrestling, and it's fairly entertaining. So it's just kind of fun to find other wrestling nerds in all walks of life. They're a big publication. They've been around for a long time. They put out stuff every day. I listen to usually their Sunday show, and it's usually got a good summary of the week. I don't catch all the wrestling through the week, but they've usually got a good summary of stuff that's happened and some of their opinions. And then the AEW Unrestricted podcast. That's hosted by some AEW people, and they just kind of bring on different guests throughout their company and stuff and talk about stuff, and it's just kind of just some insider information, just entertaining. I like it. Your next category of podcasts to listen to is probably news and social commentary. This is probably the category I listen to the most. And some of the shows I listen to on there are Fearless with Jason Whitlock, The Steve Day Show, and sometimes I'll listen to Ben Shapiro and Dan Bongino. And then I've also, lately I'm trying to work in Austin Peterson's new morning show into my rotation. Kind of a different kind of variety of people's opinions and stuff and news and takes on stuff that's going on in the world. It's just entertaining and informative, and I like it, so I listen to it. And the third category of podcasts I listen to is sports podcasts or gambling podcasts. I like to bet on NFL and hockey sometimes, so I like to listen to the Action Network podcast or the Even Money podcast. I think there's one other one. No, those are the main sports ones I listen to. Sometimes I'll download podcasts and try them out for a couple of episodes and then delete them because they're just too long. I can't listen to an hour and a half, 3 hour long sports podcast every day, like the Pat McAfee show. I'm sure it's great, but I can't listen to a 3 hour show every day on top of other stuff. Oh, I like Colin Hurd's football stuff sometimes when I have time to hear it. And then the fourth category I listen to is kind of like a variety podcast. These are ones that kind of cover sports, news, etc., everything. Kind of like mine, just kind of cover lots of topics. So on those category, I like Chris Jericho's podcast. He's a wrestler, musician, but he covers kind of anything and everything from history to wrestling to news to metal to all kinds of stuff. And then the other one I like in that category is Outkick the Show with Clay Travis. He's a sports guy, but he also kind of does news and political commentary as well, and it's a nice short show. So those are the podcasts that I like. Let me know what your thoughts are. Any other podcasts I should go check out or any music that you're into? Like I said, send me your comments, questions. Derek@DerekCreason.com is the email, or at Derek Creason. All right, next up is Army life. So like I hinted at and mentioned earlier, I am currently deployed. Hooray. I'm in the Army National Guard. If you didn't know, can't tell by some of my posts or pictures on social media or my website or in my book. I'm in the Army National Guard. I'm a CW2, Chief Warrant Officer 2. I do IT stuff for the military, just like I do IT stuff in my civilian job. I went on active duty in January of 2022, and I should be going home sometime in the next 2 months, so I'm really looking forward to being home. Not in the Middle East or Southwest Asia, as we call it. I'm not a fan of the desert. I'm not a fan of the heat. I'll give you some of my thoughts in general of the Middle East. I've been to 3 different countries in the Middle East. I won't talk specifics about bases or times or whatever. I'm just trying to have some basic OPSEC. If you want to know more, come talk to me in person. There's plenty of stories I can tell you. So far, the Middle East, I'm not a huge fan of the Middle East. It's hot. It's really hot. I've learned that any temperature over 115 degrees is really hot. I don't enjoy it. When you're happy that it's cooled down to 100 at night, you're in the gateway to hell, as I like to call it. Temperature sucks most of the time. There is a lot of poverty, a lot of just kind of not chaos or anarchy, but just kind of people just get by. Like there's not rules or OSHA or sidewalks or not always indoor plumbing or whatever. Just stuff like that that a lot of people take for granted in the first world. It's a big difference. Other things about Army life. Usually when you're on deployment, you're either very busy or very bored. So you either have a ton of work or no work. And it kind of comes in waves, kind of like everything else. So inevitably you end up with lots of downtime, which is why, as I kind of referenced earlier, I've watched a lot of movies and a lot of TV. We're able to get internet. Everybody's creative enough to find different ways to get internet kind of wherever you're at, or download movies and trade them and whatnot. But yeah, I've seen plenty of movies and TV shows, so much so that I'd rather just go home and interact with people than be excited for new TV shows and movies and stuff. Another thing is you're gone away from your life, so you have plenty of time to think and work through any things that you're struggling with mentally, whether that's your career or your life or your marriage or your parenting or your faith or your emotions. You're going to have time to think through all that stuff. I've had some really ups and downs this deployment mentally, but like I said, it's not been as busy of a deployment for me personally compared to some people's jobs, but I've been kind of grateful for that because I've had a very busy year mentally working through a lot of stuff. I'm happy to talk more details in person to people. I'm not going to give out every detail of my life on a broad-based podcast like this, but I'm happy to be authentic with you and tell you about things that I've gone through, things that I've struggled with, and things that I've learned and made progress on in my personal life. I'll give you one example. I used to be in my early to mid 30s very motivated and driven by career. Things like, getting that next job, getting that big title, getting that next promotion, getting that master's degree, getting that high-end salary. And I was very driven to that. I really enjoyed the chase. And then when I would achieve something, I wouldn't be very happy with it. And I'd say, okay, well, what's the next big goal? And I would do that. Till now, when I'm about 38, and I get to go away for a year and kind of think through all that stuff and realize maybe I'm not as motivated by that kind of stuff right now. And realized, hey, there's a couple areas in your life where you need to work to be a better person. And I was like, oh, crap, that's a lot harder to do than go achieve some career milestone. I know how to work hard and achieve. That's never been my problem. So I identified some areas where I wanted to improve in my personal life and work on being better and more authentic as a person. And I feel I've made some really good progress in some of those areas. So it hasn't all been a waste of a year, even though sometimes I like to grump and complain because I've been gone for so long. But yeah, so there are ups and downs to every deployment. You just kind of take it one day at a time. Oh, and the last thing I was going to talk about is all your technology will fall apart. You will have laptops fail, you will have cell phones fail, you will have stuff break, you will have your hard drive break, you will lose stuff, and all that's frustrating, and you're going to spend a lot of money on stupid stuff. And then you're also going to end up reevaluating your needs versus wants. I've had to live out of 2 to 5 bags for the most of the year, and you get a little room and a wall locker and a box and a couple bags. And you'll end up buying stuff and collecting stuff to make yourself feel like home, and then you'll have to move to another base or another country and realize you can't take all that stuff. So you're either going to mail it home, throw it in the trash, or give it away for free, or sell it if you're lucky. It really kind of makes you appreciate the things you have and what you need and don't need, or what you want back home, just because it's just a totally different way of life. So those are just kind of some of my thoughts and insights about things that I've gone through so far. Like I said, only 1 or 2 more months left. Can't wait to be home. Can't wait to get back to my life and my family and my friends. If you want to know more, hit me up. I'm happy to tell you more, tell you stories about deployment through my experience of it. So that's all for Army life today. All right, next up is politics, or the news. I'm just going to call it the news. That'll be my news segment. So today I'm just going to kind of go through how I'm going to do the news segment, and then I'll do more of it next time. So basically, I don't like to get my news from one specific channel or one specific website. I like to get my news from a lot of different websites and a lot of different places on Twitter. And I'll kind of talk about that just to kind of get a variety of different slants on stuff. If you don't know, there's bias in the news, and go figure. So there's a cool website called allsides.com, and it lists a lot of the mainstream media outlets and some of the more known, lesser mainstream media. I don't know what you would call it, secondary stream of media. But basically, it has 5 categories. It has the center, and then left, leaning right, and then left and right. Kind of ranks websites kind of back and forth. And so I got a folder in my web browser called News, and I have 13 websites, and I'll just kind of read them off to you from left to right that are left or lean to the left or somewhat down the middle or lean to the right or kind of to the far right on their political agenda or biases. Sometimes I'll go read about the same story from 3 or 4 different websites just to kind of see, am I getting the actual facts, or am I getting more spin and opinion and the barfeel junk to go with it? The 13 websites that I generally go to are from left to right: CNN, The Guardian, NBC News, New York Times, USA Today, Associated Press, Reuters, I don't know how you say it, The Wall Street Journal, New York Post, Washington Times, The Blaze, The Daily Wire, and Fox News. So that's the kind of the 13 websites I'll click and open and kind of scroll down through and read them. I do the same kind of thing on Twitter. I have a list called News, and I can actually share it if anybody's interested. I think it's a public list. It's just got 17 different things. So I follow a lot of things on Twitter for a lot of things, whether that's news, weather, music, metal, sports, wrestling, all kinds of stuff. But on Twitter, you can make lists and follow stuff individually. So I've got a list just for news, so I can click on that tab and just get news in that feed. So on there, and this is not in any specific order, it's kind of all over. Follow, and some of these will be the same, but there'll be some different ones. Follow the Daily Wire, Associated Press, CDC Emergency, New York Post, USA Today, KMBC, which is a local Kansas City news channel, the Washington Times, NBC News, The Blaze, @Breaking News, the Wall Street Journal, Reuters, Fox News, CNET News, which is like tech-based news, the New York Times, the Guardian News, and CNN Breaking News. And then one other big one I follow on Instagram, and they have a website. It's called Real News No BS, fairly down the middle news, and they try really hard to be unbiased as possible and cover a lot of stuff kind of more in depth that doesn't always hit the mainstream stuff. A lot of stuff related to immigration or Ukraine or stuff like that. So those are kind of my news sources, whether they kind of be on traditional websites or Twitter is pretty fast about getting news out. For military news, I like Stars and Stripes. They actually put out a pretty good paper, a daily paper that you can get overseas. Otherwise, you got to subscribe to their digital stuff. They cost money. But the big thing I want to talk about, so normally after today, I'll kind of just remind everybody about where I get my news from, but I'll kind of go through some of the headlines and give you my hot takes if you give two flying whatevers about what I think about the news. But trying to get better at just giving my opinion or talking and just being authentic with it and not just always holding my opinion in reserve. So you're going to get it whether you like it or not. The main things I wanted to communicate is just you need to learn to identify biases in the news, whether that be a political bias, a worldview bias, a military industrial complex bias, a government opinion bias. You need to be able to identify that and realize what people are trying to say or persuade you with what they're not saying or how they're saying stuff. And then I also think people need to work really hard to find the balance of being informed, like know what's going on in the world, but not completely fear-driven or doom scrolling, not just glued to their TV or their phone, just scrolling for hours and just be like, oh my gosh, everything's so terrible. Like exhausted by all the fear-driven stuff. Like learn to think for yourself, take responsibility for yourself, learn to, make smart decisions, learn where to get information, learn who you can trust, who you can listen to, take things with a grain of salt, get them verified. I grew up in Missouri, the show me state. Like, don't just take everything at face line value, just kind of learn to, don't be dumb, learn how to survive in the world. Like there's a time and place for news, and then there's a time and place to turn it off and just go live. But yeah, just all the fear-driven news is just exhausting. So that's kind of the motive that I wanted to push towards the news. If I talk about the news, like some of it's interesting to talk about. Like personally for me, I'm hoping to get home before potential World War III kicks off. I'm not a huge fan of being on this side of the world. If it's all going to go crazy here in the next few months, I'd rather get home and not be involved in that. We'll talk about things like that as news articles and stuff come up. Like my views on foreign policy have changed dramatically over the last 10 years because I'm the guy that has to go. We'll talk about that kind of stuff. So that's what the news section will be. So enjoy. All right, next up is Derek's Creative Corner. What I've been working on lately. I've been doing a lot of research on audio, video, music production. I've been consuming so much content, like I talked about earlier, that I'm really missing out on being creative, and I've wanted to get back into that. So I'm going to try to do some more podcasting. I know one of my sons is kind of interested in like video game streaming and creating YouTube videos. So I'd love to work with him on that, doing video type production and stuff. I've been doing a lot of research into just some decent entry, medium level type stuff for like audio recording that could work for podcasts, that could work for music recording. I've always been working on music for the last 10, 15 years of stuff I wanted to record. So I think if I can get some of this equipment, that will kind of remove some of the last doubts or blockades of why haven't you done it yet. And then like I mentioned earlier, I have all the downtime in the world to do all the research and read all the reviews and find the best prices and make lists. I'd like to make lots of lists in spreadsheets or in my Apple Notes, just of projects and the things of what I would need to do them and how much it would cost and the timeline of them. I'm just working to slowly be creative. Like this is episode 5. I found a way to write it in my template, and then I found a place where I could go and it's semi-quiet at the USO to record it. We'll see if I can pump out something more sooner than 8 months. I like being creative. I'm enjoying that today. So that's what I've been up to lately. All right, next up is pro wrestling and MMA. Maybe this will end up becoming just the sports segment in general, but right now it's pro wrestling and MMA. So first up, UFC 280 is coming up. I used to not be into UFC so much. I think this next UFC fight is coming up this Saturday, like the 20th something. There's 2 fights that I'm kind of interested in. The bantamweight title fight should be a good one. And then there's another guy named Sean O'Malley. He's a bantamweight. I think he's ranked 11th or 12th right now. He usually has funny colored hair, but he's working his way up the rankings and he's pretty entertaining to watch. I've gone back and watched like the last 5 or 6 UFC pay-per-views, and I'm starting to get more into it. I kind of enjoy it. I'm looking forward to the next one coming up and just getting more into UFC and MMA in general. Next up, I'm just going to mention this as a headline, and I'll talk more about it later in other episodes, but 2022 has been a great year for professional wrestling. Professional wrestling had its big boom in the late 90s, like 97 to like 2000, 2001 maybe. That was the Attitude Era back in WWF before it became WWE. It was super big time. And then I used to watch wrestling back then, and then I didn't watch it till probably about 2016. But yeah, it's just been a really good year. There's a ton of headlines. A lot of interesting things happened in WWE. I really like AEW the most, but I watch WWE occasionally. And then I watch some of the other smaller promotions like Ring of Honor or Impact. Sometimes New Japan or AAA if you can find it, but some of that stuff's hard to find. But yeah, there's been a lot. It's been a really crazy year for pro wrestling. It's kind of having a really big resurgence. A lot of things are going on. So it's an exciting time to watch. And having all the downtime in the world, occasionally I've been able to keep up with it and watch all the pay-per-views. And I usually watch AEW every week, and then I'll read about or watch highlights from WWE because they have push out so much content every week. I can't watch it all. I like wrestling, but I don't like it 5, 8, 10 hours of it a week. So we'll talk more about wrestling in the future. And then the last thing on this segment is down in San Antonio. So I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be exciting. I'm not even a huge WWE fan at the moment, but the Royal Rumble is kind of like WrestleMania. It's one of those big things. So I'm going to check it off my bucket list of being a big wrestling fan of going to the Royal Rumble. So I think my tickets are in the nosebleeds, but that's okay because I still get to go there and be part of the crowd. So it'll be fun. So that's all for today on pro wrestling MMA. Let me know your thoughts, who you like, who you don't like. All right, that is going to do it for this episode 5, getting back into the swing of things. I am going to finish up recording here and then go back to my room and try to put it all together, put in the music, sounds, the transitions, cut out any big errors. Kind of do this in one live take unless I just bomb a segment and redo it. I think Spotify bought them actually, but it's a great way to put out podcasts for free. It's super easy. I think there was only one part where my Siri went off on my watch and kind of interrupted me, and if I can cut that out, cool, and if not, oh well, it's just a silly thing that happened. It's kind of like doing a live show. You just roll with it. There's actually a really funny clip of what was the guy who used to be on Fox News? Bill something. I can't remember his last name. Gosh dang it. But anyways, he got angry and was yelling, we'll do it live. They're trying to do a read of something, and he got mad and was cursing, and then it turned on live, and he acted all happy, and it's a pretty funny clip if you can find it. So anyways, yeah, this is kind of the fun of being creative and learning podcasting. As my skills and equipment and whatever increase, it'll get better. But for now, I'm just going to do it. So like it, don't like it, enjoy, don't enjoy. It's up to you. Let me know what you think. Give me questions, comments, feedback. You can email me, Derek@DerekCreason.com. You can hit me up on social media at Derek Creason on Twitter or Instagram. Like I said, my book is available on Amazon, 20-something, Surviving the 10 Most Important Years of Your Life. You can get it on Kindle, you can get it on paperback. Go to Amazon.com, search my name. Go to my website, DerekCreason.com. Search for it there. There's links to it at the top. There's links to it at the side. There's links to it pinned on all my social medias. So on my website there, you can sign up for my newsletter. I won't spam you to death. I'll just send out updates once in a great while, like when I put up a new blog post or a new episode of the podcast. And then, last but not least, this podcast, like I said, I do it on Anchor.fm. It pushes to all the major platforms. So I think I'm on 10, maybe 11 platforms now. You can get it on Spotify, you can get it on Apple, you can get it on iTunes, you can get it on Google Podcasts. I just added iHeartRadio, a whole bunch of them. So you can go to Anchor.fm/Derek Creason and see it there. You can link to my podcast from my website and see it there. It's got icons and links to every platform possible. You can get it on Pocket Casts. You can get it on all kinds of stuff. Spotify, TuneIn, iHeartRadio. Yeah, pretty much anything you could ever, any kind of podcasting platform that you use, it's out there. Hit me up. Let me know what you think. I hope you guys have a great day. I will catch you later. They did have a band come through for the 4th of July.
I found this on the web.
There went my serious phone. Go watch. I don't know why that went off. That's awesome. That'll be a nice big outtake in the middle.